All right, folks, welcome to Greer City Hall. We thank you for joining us this evening. This is a Greer City Council meeting called and convened this evening, September 10th, 2019. Having called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask, if you would, to stand with us for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then Councilmember Lee Dumas will offer an invocation for the council.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we invoke your presence here tonight. We thank you that you're here with us and amongst us in this great city that you've given us. Thank you that we have the ability here to lead and a great staff to serve, and pray for our citizens out in the community today, Lord. Go with us as we make decisions for the city tonight. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Amen.
We set aside time at the beginning of each meeting for public forum. Public forum is an opportunity for the public to speak in regards to items that are on the agenda that evening. This evening we have one person that would like to appear in public forum, Mr. Chip Patat. Mr. Patat, if you'd like to come to the podium, it is yours, sir.
Good evening. My name is Chip Patat, and I'm here representing the Board of Directors of Daily Bread Ministries. Daily Bread Ministries has served the homeless and disadvantaged in Greer for 28 years. We currently operate the Greer Soup Kitchen and the STEP program. The STEP program operates at 511 East Poinsett Street, and it has 5 apartments that house 4 homeless families. Adults living in STEP housing are required to attend on-site classes that educate them in life skills, and they're coached to find jobs, transportation, and permanent housing that will allow them to become self-sufficient. We would like to increase the number of homeless people that we can help by building 5 tiny homes on the Soup Kitchen property, an area that we rarely use. I'm sorry. This is the overhead of the Soup Kitchen property. The area outlined in red is the area that we would like to put. It's a back corner, 15 Poinsett Street. That's the back corner of the Soup Kitchen property. That's where we would like to put it. This is part of the site plan. We showed where the tiny homes would be. There would be 2 on one side and 3 on the other in this corner here. These homes would be for individuals or for small unit families for short-term emergency housing and longer-term housing for those who would like to enter the STEP program. This would provide them with the same educational and life coaching opportunities to help them transition out of homelessness. The homes would be attractive, well-maintained, and unobtrusive in the intended location. The reason for tiny homes is that we believe this is the most cost-efficient way to accomplish this goal. Many cities have used this type of thing as a model, and a similar tiny home community for the homeless is already in operation in the upstate and easily at the Dream Center. The next photos are of the Dream Center's homes and are very similar to what we would like to build. They are 12 by 16 feet, 192 square feet, and will contain a bed, a bunk bed, that have a bathroom with a sink, shower, toilet, small little kitchenette. We will offer a safe, warm, comfortable place for people to live that is also compact and cost efficient, enabling the homeless to come off the streets and have basic hygiene and living quarters that most of us take for granted. Both the soup kitchen and STEP program have paid directors who oversee daily operations. Plans are for the tiny home community to have a person who would be a live-in person to act as an on-site manager. This would be a responsible person who would be going through the STEP program themselves. Regular inspections would be conducted of the houses and grounds. Residents would be required to keep their homes and grounds in good order, and no drugs or alcohol would be allowed on the premises. Smoking would not be allowed on the premises, and any misconduct or violations would be dealt with swiftly. Daily Bread Ministries is a 501c3 corporation and is funded solely by private donations. The Tiny Home Project would be funded by contributions from individuals, churches, schools, businesses, etc. We receive no government funding, and we would not seek any financial help from the city for this project. A few weeks ago, the Planning Commission recommended denying DRD zoning of the soup kitchen property. The main reason was this project did not fit the spirit and character of the area. These homes for the homeless would be built at the back of the soup kitchen. 2 doors away is a homeless shelter. Directly behind it on Highland Avenue is another homeless shelter. I believe that this project exactly fits into the character and spirit of this area because of what's already there. In fact, I'm not sure if it could be really a better place to put it. As a city council, we all have accomplished some big things for the city of Greer, and we thank you. We're now occupying one of them, a beautiful building surrounded by a beautiful park. To the city, these 5 homes are small potatoes. They won't bring in any money, no new industry or business. They're just 5 little houses built on the back corner of a soup kitchen. Most people driving by will never even notice they're there. To the master plan of Greer, they're really not a big deal. However, to the folks who will be able to sleep in a warm bed instead of under a tree, they'll be a big deal. To those who will have a bathroom to use, a place to shower, a door to lock where they can be safe, they'll be a big deal. This winter, when it's 15 or 20 degrees outside, they'll be a real big deal. Possibly even the difference between life and death. I'll show you just a few pictures of some of the homeless folks in Greer. These are folks that are in the STEP program. These folks here are at the soup kitchen that eat with us on regular basis. Again, all these are homeless. This lady, her name is Donna. Donna's a 1970 graduate of Greer High School. She is 67 years old, and she sleeps outside every night. If you walked around this park today, you might would have seen her around here. I'm 65 years old, and I've made a lot of decisions in my life. Sometimes I've made a decision because it was a practical thing to do. Sometimes I've decided because it was what I wanted to do. I hate to admit it, but sometimes I've made decisions based on what I thought other people wanted me to do. But my best decisions have been made because it was the right thing to do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the right thing to do. Allowing us to build these homes and house and transition these folks out of homelessness is the right thing to do. Jesus said, whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Please let us help these folks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Council, contained in your packet are the minutes from the council meeting held on August the 27th, 2019. Entertain a motion that they be received.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, we have a special recognition this evening, and I know I see several familiar faces with us this evening for Constitution Week. This is something that we celebrate regularly here. I don't know that we have been doing it for 232 years, but we've regularly proclaimed Constitution Week, and so Kathy Gerard is here with us, and I see some other folks. If y'all want to come to the front, we've got a presentation to make. So I typically meet regularly with a chapter or two of the DAR, and this is one of the things that we recognize on a regular basis. And so the proclamation states that whereas September 17, 2019 marks the 232nd anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebration which will commemorate the occasion. Whereas public law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, the City of Greer does hereby proclaim the week September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution in 1787 by diligently protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through the guardians of our liberty, remembering that we lost right that never be regained. So I would like to present this to you ladies, and all right. And if you, all right, if y'all would like to say anything.
We're getting ready to put a sign up for the museum in just a few minutes. And next Tuesday at 4 o'clock, everybody's supposed to ring bells. So several of us will be in front of the museum to ring bells. And I'm hoping that City Hall will ring bells. So,
We can't bring up manual. We might just play a song. Try to get it up there. Appreciate it. Council, in my 20 years on council, I have very seldom seen the look that I just saw on our city administrator's face when they asked us to ring the bells.
I'll climb the tower myself.
Well, I don't know.
I'll be here for that.
I saw you looking at Mike, so I'm assuming Mike's going to climb the tower.
It can certainly be done. I wasn't personally familiar with the request.
We'll try our best to figure it out. With that, the administrator's report.
Thank you, sir. Mostly a few calendar reminders. One, as this Thursday is our benefits fair. I'll remind you that will be taking place
here at the city from 7:30 a.m. until noon. Opportunity for you to get information from several of our vendors that we work very closely with. Also giving information to all of our employees concerning open enrollment, which will be taking place in October. And yes, you are eligible for at least a half point of the wellness program by attending that program. So we do hope to see everyone there. There'll be flu shots and blood draws and all the things that we normally do in providing information. I want to make sure that we're all aware that the opening for our Center for the Arts will be taking place the following weekend. This is going to be happening on the weekend of September the 20th, 21st, and 22nd. There is a gala event that Friday evening. I have communicated with most of you concerning your attendance plans, but if you have not had an opportunity yet to let us know whether or not you do indeed plan to participate that Friday evening at the gala, if you could please let us know. Those tickets have been reserved for you. We have 2 tickets for each member. But however, if you cannot attend, we are going to offer those tickets to someone else within our organization. We want to have a good turnout that evening, so we're really looking forward to that. We hope that you will be able to join us that Friday night for the gala event. Of course, the dedication will be taking place on Saturday. It's going to be a fun-filled day with entertainment. There'll be activities both inside the park and inside the facility as well, but we'll be doing the dedication on Saturday morning. And on Sunday afternoon, we'll be holding tours of the facility for the community as well. So it's a full weekend there. Had an opportunity to spend some time this afternoon over at the facility. There is a bustle of activity that is taking place as we are trying to prepare that site in the next week and a half. But we can assure you it will be transformed as they are assembling furniture and desks and all of those things this week and next week as we prepare for that grand opening the following weekend. Look forward to doing that. Rail Fest will also be taking place here at City Park. That's September 28th. Look forward to that event as an annual festival here in the park. We are participating with our Greer Station Association. Their annual chili cook-off will be here at City Park on October the 3rd, and we will have another food truck rollout on Friday evening, October the 18th. Looking forward to all of those events. Our parking garage, that project is out to bid. We have now advertised that project. There will be a mandatory pre-bid conference on Thursday, September 19th, and our bids will be opened here at City Hall on October the 8th. So I look forward. That is actually the date of your council meeting. I will have preliminary numbers for you that evening as we convene for the city council meeting, but we will open those bids earlier in the day on October 18th. Are we actually meeting on October 18th? I think that's the one we moved back. I may have misspoke. Let me check that. We moved it back for that October meeting, didn't we? Yes. So I will still open bids on the 18th, and at our next meeting I will share information with you. That was a meeting that we actually moved our date back to the 29th, exactly. And so I think I have a couple of dates mixed up there, and I apologize for that. October the 8th. You do meet on the 8th. I am so confused. I apologize. That is your first meeting in October. And at that first meeting in October, that is the date of the bid opening, and we will bring information to you that evening. Please look at the calendar. I apologize. But we are on schedule with that. Everything is moving forward. Look forward to getting that out and seeing what interest we will have from vendors, construction, general contractors for the construction of that parking garage. Relative to the streetscape project, the most important thing to report is that we are on schedule and we remain on budget. Work is progressing very, very well on that project as well. A couple of folks have asked us, we will have landscaping installed on Trade Street as we open that for the Christmas shopping season in November. We're having to do a little modification with some temporary irrigation for that as we get that installed this fall, but it will be installed, and then we'll move from temporary to permanent irrigation as we move into the spring. But that street will be completed except for the intersection of Victoria and Trade, as well as the intersection of Randall and Trade. And the reason for that is that we will be doing paving in the spring that will require lots of asphalt movement through those intersections. You may recall that those had medallions in the intersections. We do not want to take a chance with messing those up with new asphalt paving, so we will hold off on those intersections until the spring after we've completed the paving of those areas. The Randall Street will be completed, but the Victoria will not, so it was a situation that we just wanted to protect both of those intersections, and then we'll come back in, we'll hang the string lighting and those types of things near the end of the project. But again, just wanted to make sure that folks were aware we're on schedule, we'll have that open, the landscaping will be in place, and we have new Christmas decorations on order that will ornate Trade Street as we've approached that Christmas shopping season as well. I think our merchants will be very, very pleased with the product that they will see there. We'll continue to move into construction, into some of those outlying areas around the project area once we complete the work in the 100 block of Trade Street as well. So things are moving well. We're on schedule, on budget, looking forward to being able to move forward with that project. Apologize for the confusion on the October date, but I think we've gotten that straight now. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Council, questions of department heads in regards to reports or information is always available from the department head or the administrator. I'll be glad to assist you with that. Council, if it's your pleasure, we'll move to items of old business. The first of which is the second and final reading of ordinance number 30-2019. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Pantheon Properties, LLC, located at 306 West Poinsett Street from OD, which is Office District, to DRD. Mr. McMahon, any new or additional information in regards to ordinance number 30-219?
No, sir, there is no new information.
This was the office property that is going to be partially converted back to a residence. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, before us this evening is the second and final reading of ordinance number 31-2019. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of properties owned by Renew Properties LLC and K&L Investments, Inc., located at 117 and 119 Brown Street from R12 to DRD. Mr. McMahon, any new or additional information in regards to ordinance number 31-2019?
No, sir, there is no new information.
Hearing that from staff, do I hear a motion to receive?
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Comments? Questions? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Miss Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, the final item of old business before us this evening is the second and final reading of ordinance number 32-2019. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Greer Community Outreach Center, located on Turner Street, from RM1 multifamily residential to RM2 multifamily residential. Any new or additional information in regards to ordinance number 32-2019? Mr. McMahon?
No, sir, no new information.
Entertain a motion that ordinance number 32-2019 be received.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for questions. Discussion. Comments. Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin, Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council will move to the items of new business, the first of which is the first reading of ordinance number 33-2019. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of properties owned by column GSP 081 LP located at 551, 557, 575, and 597 Victor Hill Road by 100% petition, and to establish a zoning classification of I-1, which is our industrial district, for said property. Mr. McMahon.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Ordinance 33-2019 is an annexation request for 4 parcels, as you said, located on Victor Hill Road. They are requesting I-1 zoning for future development. This is the current zoning map. The 4 parcels are highlighted in red. Here's the future land use map showing that it is within an employment center. And the current street view map. This will go before Planning Commission on September 23rd for the zoning request. That is all the information at this time, but we have to answer any questions you may have.
By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Mr. Dean, the record indicate that Mr. Deaton is a representative, or is representing the owners of the property. Anything that you'd like to add to the description so far, Mr. Deaton?
Mayor and Council, Mr. Cullen requested you this evening, asking to be here next year.
Thank you, sir. I entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second at this point. Any questions? Comments? Discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Item B this evening is the first reading of ordinance number 34-2019. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Greer Mill LLC located at 300 Connecticut Avenue from I-1 Industrial to PD Planned Development District. Mr. McMahon, information in this regard?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to kind of read the statement of intent to you. This is the current zoning of the property. It is currently I-1, as you stated, surrounded by RM1, apologize for that. Here's the future land use map showing that the center itself is an employment center. It's kind of hard to get a street view of the mill site, so we kind of try to do an aerial view to give you a better look at it. And here's the proposed site plan. The applicant is proposing to have up to 120 apartments ranging from studio apartments to 3-bedroom apartments. They're also proposing a small boutique hotel, commercial space, and self-storage center on site. The site plan will consist of 1.4 acres of open space. The developer of the Greer Mill site will redevelop the site to the Secretary standards for the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic properties. That's all the information I have at this time. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
You said it was a boutique, what did you say?
A small boutique hotel is what they're proposing in their statement of intent.
By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Record will indicate no one said so. I'll entertain a motion to receive for the purpose of discussion.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions?
When, since this is a PD, when they will submit their proposal, and that will go before Planning Commission,
They will have to go back to Planning Commission for a final development plan, yes, sir.
and now will that final development plan come back here?
It will not. Planning Commission has that authority.
So it's going to be apartments as well as a small hotel? Is that what you're saying?
That's what they are proposing at this time. I believe they're still trying to reach out to potential commercial businesses. They're proposing a small boutique hotel, some commercial space, office space, and self-storage on site, I believe, from what they have talked to us about, will be for the residents.
Did they say what they plan on doing with the existing mill buildings?
They are proposing to pretty much keep everything. They actually even want to keep the water tower to kind of have it refurbished to kind of keep it in standards with what they're doing. This will be done through historic preservation tax credits, so they will have standards they have to meet from the Department of Interior.
So they plan on keeping the smokestacks too?
Yes, sir, that's their hope.
Comments or more discussion?
Where's the runoff going to? The water, the runoff?
They will have to address that when they go through civil review. The existing homeowner, I believe, is right here. Once they go through review, they will have to show where the stormwater runoff is. We don't have that. That's more in the civil plans. And we haven't received those yet.
Others? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas.
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Item C is the first reading of ordinance number 35-2019. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Daily Bread Ministries, Inc., located at 521 East Poinsett Street, from C2 Commercial to DRD, which is a Design Review District. Mr. McMahon, information in that regard, please, sir?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Ordinance 35-2019, as you said, is a rezoning request for property located at 521 East Poinsett, rezoned from C2 Commercial to DRD, Design Review District, for a proposed tiny home community to be used as a homeless shelter. Here's the current zoning. I put a little blue arrow because it's kind of hard to see the red outline of the property, showing the zoning for the area. Here's the future land use map. Here's a street view of the property, and here's the proposed site plan. The applicant is requesting to continue the use as the Greer Soup Kitchen and to create up to 5 tiny homes that will be used for short-term emergency housing and long-term housing for those wishing to enter the STEP program. The applicant is proposing that the community be overseen by an individual that has completed the STEP program. Staff made a recommendation of denial to the Planning Commission based on the rezoning request would be out of character for the surrounding zoning district along East Poinsett Street and not an appropriate land use. The majority of properties fronting East Poinsett Street from Line Street to Mason are zoned C2 Commercial and I-1 Industrial at the site next to this. Planning Commission made a recommendation for denial of the request and the Audit Planning Commission. That's all the information I have at this time, but we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. By show of hands, the owner of the property, a representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Record will indicate somebody said so. Will you be available for questions? Okay. Floor is open for, I'll entertain a motion to receive ordinance number 35-2019.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion.
That area right there is so mixed right now with the church there and houses, the older service station across the street. I think there's even some, I can't remember, some little building right there that's kind of closed down or something within that vicinity. So, and then you come on down the car lots there, but there's houses in there also, like house on that street, on that side and over on the other side. Now, I don't know if those are part of the STEP program, either one of those. Like there's one next to the service station, I believe.
Those are not. Those houses that you see on East Poinsett Street, those properties are zoned C2 Commercial. They are just grandfathered in as residential.
Oh, okay.
So if that grandfather status after 90 days ever ceases to exist, that property will convert to
But
C2.
they are residential lived in, right, rather than a business? Is that right?
Some of them are. Typically, the yellow dots that you have on the map will be the residential areas. The church that you're speaking of, I believe it's New Jerusalem, that property is also zoned C2 Commercial.
Yeah. And then the church has their life center or recreation building there right next to it.
And they also have a homeless shelter on the backside of that, you're already in that area. And that's, I get what they say sometimes about land use and that. Sometimes I think we need to use a little common sense, especially when we're dealing with, people's lives and that. And always, giving people the opportunity to have a second chance. And I think that's what those houses represent, is for people to have a second chance. And I think it's up to this council, to use a little common sense when it comes to something like that, because that's my area, and I think that this would fit in well, because that soup kitchen's been there for a while, and they deal with a lot of homeless people. They haven't had any problems at all down there. And they also have a homeless shelter that they use to help people get back on their feet too, I mean, I think it's not often we have somebody that comes to council that's willing to do something for the community that doesn't ask for any funds, first off. They didn't ask for anything. They went out into the community and secured the funding. And I think it's up to us to create a path so that they can make something like this happen.
Yeah, and from the photos that he displayed to us, I mean, they look full of character there. So I know that so many different ministries do things to help the homeless and give them shelter and start the First Step programs that they go through, as well as having someone that has graduated from the First Step come back and kind of mentor the people that are there and make sure things and rules are followed through. And I feel like they certainly, as a ministry program there, that they would be providing and helping the ones that are on the street. And you see so many cities now on the news, and I certainly wouldn't ever want Greer. And I don't think that South Carolina will get in the position that you see some of the other. But anytime you can help somebody else and help them start a new life, I think it's a great thing.
Yes, ma'am. Staff's decision was based purely off the land use. The shelter that you spoke of on Highland is in a residential community, and that property is owned residential, and that's where we feel homeless shelters like this need to be. The Dream Center, as he spoke of, is actually a converted school, and it's surrounded by residential. So it's in a residential use area. If they were to have this, it goes to a residential use in our eyes. Everything along East Point set, with the exception of the center they currently have, which was owned back in 1999, is commercial in aspect, with the asphalt center directly next to it. So you have an industrial property that's going to go directly next to a proposed residential area.
But why do you think it's not a true residential? I mean, because it's not like it's going to be permanent for a family. I don't get where you're saying that it's going to be, like somebody would be going to work, come home, this is my home forever. Those people know that when they move in there, that it's just transitional. It's just something to help them get back on their feet and become a productive member of society again. And I don't equate that with the same thing as being, a true residential, as you would like that. The homeless shelter on the backside isn't a true residential, because people actually live there, But this here, I don't consider
Mayor
that.
and Council, if I may offer, we've had great discussion at the staff level about what the recommendation possibly should be on this. Please know that our recommendation is only relative to the adopted land use plan that we have. We take no position in public policy of whether or not this is what we should or should not do as a community. Planning staff's responsibility is to comply with that which is adopted by council as our land use. As a public policy matter, it is certainly your purview of whether or not certain things need to have an exception to those for certain reasons. So I just wanted to try to make clear that the recommendation isn't whether we should or should not have this type of a facility in this location. Their recommendation was solely based on your land use plan, your adopted land use plan. And we recognize that again, that is council's purview to make that decision as an exception to what we have adopted. And
I don't want to say I'm fussing him, because I'm not fussing him.
Right. I just want to
understand he got a job to do, just like you got a job to do.
Right. And, so we just want to make sure
for the community. I understand what you're saying.
We're not saying that you shouldn't do it. We're just saying it isn't appropriately zoned for that request.
Yeah, I understand all that. That's why I was saying when I started that sometimes it's up to us to use a little common sense.
Absolutely.
I know you got to do what you got to do, because that's your job. And you gotta bring in, things that say, well, this is out of character for the area, but what I'm saying though is if there's an opportunity to give people a second chance, then we need to consider that, And I'm not fussing at you about the recommendation that you brought, that staff, because that's what you're supposed to do, to say, well, this is not, right for a residence, you're gonna have people living there, but my way of looking at it is that those people are only gonna be there in a transitional, mode, that they only coming in for a little while to help them get back on their feet. And the way that they've run their programs in the past, we haven't had any problems with, with them helping people out. And sometimes people just need a helping hand, they fall on bad luck, but for the grace of God, there go we are, and I think that we got to keep that in mind too, because we got to understand too that God's been good to our city. There are a lot of cities that are struggling and having a hard time with that, but God's been good to Greer. Our city has been one of the ones that's been flourishing, and we've always set a high standard, on certain things. So again, I'm not fussing at you, and I'm not fussing at
No, we understand. I just wanted to be clear.
Speaking, from a humanitarian standpoint, trying to help people get back on their feet and become productive citizens, because the hope is that you would help somebody get back on their feet and then become homeowners and contribute to the city's tax base too. That's what I would think would happen in the end, because that lady that he pointed out, that he said graduated in 1970, I knew she was homeless because she used to be over by the office in Greer all the time. I used to see her every day. She'd be hanging out by that QT and by that Lidl, and I'd see her, and I saw her when she come to Greer, and I was like, amazed that somebody that was homeless in Greer found their way to Greer, so it's a problem we're going to have to deal with one way or the other.
Mr. McMahon, are we changing the entire parcel?
The entire parcel would be zoned DRD.
DRD.
The statement of intent would lay the zoning. That's why when Mr. Tatt brought up that it's going to be 5 homes, they could have, or 5 tiny homes, it could be up to 10 people that are staying on site. The statement of intent does say that they will have an on-site person. If that were to happen, an on-site person would have to be there at all times. I think that was one of the issues that was also brought up to the Planning Commission, that Mr. Tatt brought up to the Planning Commission, that they may or may not have an on-site person. Planning Commission debated this pretty good amongst themselves, but I think it completely came back to the land use for the area.
As far as the DRD, does it minimize or maximize the amount of houses that can be on site? I mean, is it only going to be 5?
So with DRD, since they are requesting up to 5, they can have no more than 5. DRD is, as we all know, you can kind of lay out the zoning within the statement of intent and your site plan, but what they are showing is 5, and they could not go more than 5 without coming back to the council and having it rezoned again.
Is it possible to have the soup kitchen there and leave it zoned as it is, and that certain portion up there be cut out?
Well, one, we want to be careful of spot zoning.
Yeah.
That's one of our concerns. So we do want to be careful of spot zoning. And the other is, it would require the site, that piece to be removed and set as a parcel of its own, because we can't zone a portion of a parcel. It has to be the entire parcel, and that's been long-standing for us to do that.
So which are we going to do? We're going to do the entire parcel?
You would have to rezone the entire parcel, otherwise it would have to be separated out and made into a separate parcel.
I mean, can that not be done? I mean, is that...
Well, it can be done. I'm not sure that it's necessary, because the rezoning DRD would allow the soup kitchen to still exist and to operate. The biggest issue, the biggest point of a DRD is the statement of intent. And so by approving that and the statement of intent, you are managing and you're controlling that which you approve. Statement of intent says 5, they can't do more than 5.
Yeah, well, on that piece of property, yeah.
Well, I suspect that this is only one of a handful of little enclaves in the city that is a kind of a mishmash. And regardless of the comprehensive plan that kind of paints with a broad brush, there are spots in the city that are a mess, if you will, or a mixture. And I gotta hand it to Chip. That was an excellent presentation. And you brought up one point that really got me thinking, was based on what's there now, if this is not the right place for it, where is? You know, when you said that, that rang a bell. I think it may be something worth pursuing. I really do.
I think the conundrum that I find myself in is I wrote down 10, 12 questions just right off the bat during Mr. Patet's presentation, an excellent presentation, you know, in regards to the details of such a project. But then it occurred to me as we've sat here tonight, it's really not about the details. In some regard, it's about to Mr. Griffin's comment, common sense, and at what point do we bow to common sense? This council in the last 20 years has overridden the Planning and Zoning Council probably twice, maybe 3 times. So this would be a landmark decision to overturn a recommendation that comes unanimously from staff and from the Planning Commission. That's not to say that it can't be done, because there is a mechanism in place that allows us to do it. I think I find myself struggling with that question. Is, to Mr. Griffin's point, I don't think that there's anybody sitting at this table that denies that we shouldn't do what we can to help anybody in this community that needs help, whether it's homeless or they need food or whatever that is. And I think we have demonstrated through the years that we are attuned to those things, and I think as a community we do a pretty darn good job of it. And I don't doubt that there are needs that are going to continue to exist for as long as any of us are going to be around, and even well beyond that. I am struggling with the whole idea of do we do something simply because it's common sense or it's good, when we ourselves are the ones that approved this plan and put the ordinance in place to do the zoning. Because what happens if we do it once is, are we willing to do it again if it's another good cause? And then are we willing to do it again if it's another good cause? I find myself wanting to err on the side of a plan that we've put in place that has served us well in the past, and I hope will serve us well in the future. It may not be as good an example as it could be or should be, but you know, we have rules and we have ordinances and we have laws, and you know, is it in our best behalf to set those aside if it seems like common sense or it's a good idea? And I'm not convinced that is an appropriate way to go about this. I applaud the efforts of those that want to do something, and I think this council would be willing to help in the engagement of that. I am not convinced that this is the piece of property for it, and at this point, don't know that I will support it.
Is there any different type of construction or anything they could do back there that would fall within the guidelines? I mean, instead of the individual 5 little tiny houses?
Well, I think the issue is not the tiny homes or how they look. It's the question is the zoning.
Yeah.
Because once you make that decision to do that, to override, you know, the plan that we put in place, to override the Planning Commission, then just like the mayor was saying, the next good project that comes along, do we do that? And do we do the next one? And then when you put the brakes on and say, no, we can't do it, then you open yourself up for legal action that says, yeah, well, it doesn't matter what you say you're going to do, you're going to allow this because you went against everything that you said that you were going to do, and you picked and choose. I mean, if you want to play the devil's advocate, what if it was another group of people proposing a homeless shelter, but it was a group that maybe some of us had issues with their thinking, their theology, whatever, and then we said, no, we're not going to let you do it, but we'll let someone else do it. I've got a couple of questions for Chip. I'm reading the...
Let's let him come to the podium, so
okay.
on the record, please.
I'm reading, or I've looked over the summation from the staff as far as your statement of intent, and this is in here. One of their concerns was it would also be used for short-term emergency housing. Break that. Tell me what the difference between short-term emergency housing is versus someone or a family in the STEP program that's in my thinking. Emergency housing is, it's going to get 5 degrees tonight. We need to try to get some of these people off the street.
Yeah, emergency housing would be if we had a home available, if it was empty, and something like you just described happened, then we would be willing to put them into that house that night, you know. The STEP program, it stays pretty full. There's a waiting list to get in there. There's some pretty good requirements to get in because of the family situation. And so that we don't do emergency housing in the STEP building that now exists, okay?
What happens, and I have no thought in my mind that you guys will not do exactly what you said you intend to do. But, you know, all of our days are numbered, so when you were gone, and maybe the entire board is gone, what kind of assurances does the city have that if we were to override the planning commission and allow these small homes to be built, that they would be maintained properly, that they would be supervised properly, all the things you laid out? I mean, how does that progression, how does that happen?
Well, first of all, Daily Bread Ministries has been around for 28 years. So we have a history of doing the things the right way. In other words, taking care of our buildings, taking care of businesses that should be done, doing what we're supposed to do. I don't think y'all will find any problems with what we do now. I don't know of any if they exist. We have a board of directors which has always been in place and changes through the years. Some go off because of age, some I'm sure go off because of death, but the board of directors continues right on, because when that one person drops off, somebody else comes on with the same mission in mind, which is to help the homeless and disadvantaged in Greer. That the only way I can see this failing in the way you're talking about would be if the board of directors cease to exist, which is not going to happen as long as Daily Bread Ministries is in existence, because that is who takes care of it, that's who oversees it. Much like your job here, you know.
So if, all right, well, let's just use that hypothetical in the worst case scenario.
Okay.
Daily Bread Ministries ceased.
Yes.
So now we've got 5 homes down there that can be occupied by whoever after that parcel of land is sold. Is there any way we can have assurances that I don't know what I'm looking at, assurances that as long as Daily Bread Ministries operated, this is what was going to happen on this parcel of land?
I think, I don't know because I'm not an attorney, but I think you could put a deed restriction possibly that would limit that, and so that you could say that this is the only thing this can be used on for, and that's it. I mean, if you're not using it for that, you can't use it, you know, much like you would a restriction on house.
Brandon was trying to say something, so let me see what he has to say about that.
DRD will label the zoning what they can do. Nothing outside of what is in that statement of intent can be done on that property without having it rezoned.
I think there's another point here, and that is there's no cooking facilities or anything in these buildings. I mean, let's not get tiny homes and what these are. These are shelter. Confused here. So once they're, you know, if it's a soup kitchen, if the ministry ceased to exist, there's really not a way to feed on that site.
No, I think, that's not what I was getting to.
Okay.
Let's say you have someone comes in, buys that site as is, and they start renting out those houses on a daily basis, and then say, okay, you eat over here, and where our kitchen facilities are, you just come right on over. That kind of thing. That, you know, and I know that's not the intent, but, you know, that's just my mind. It runs way out sometimes, but, and then I don't know that if we're getting into the weeds legally when we start having assurances like that, Brandon, is that?
I would have to defer that to the city attorney. I do not believe you can put a deed restriction and say the property can never be rented, or at least with the exception of, I mean, that's what the DRD zone is.
Right.
I've never seen a deed restriction that says the building cannot be rented out. So if someone were to buy the property and maintain the soup kitchen, there's nothing stopping this statement of intent. Doesn't say that these are free or they could be rented. I mean, it's not really.
Mr. Patat, with 5 homes, you said they could be bunked, so you could have a maximum capacity of 10. Is the cost the only reason that you didn't consider a dormitory or a shelter on the property?
That was really the main thing, yes. Our step building is a very well-built, nice building. It was expensive to build, in my opinion. And I don't think we could accomplish this for the amount of money we're planning to spend with a freestanding building, one building, you know. I'm not saying we wouldn't look at that if that's what was required. We definitely could, but I don't think it could be done as inexpensively, which as a ministry, our funds are limited, and we're trying to do it as cost efficient as possible.
Other questions of Mr. Patel?
No, that was generally what I was trying to ask a while ago. Was there any type of other building that you could do there instead of the houses to make it fill into the type of coating that it is now? You know, so that was kind of where I was going with that question.
Well, I want to clear up one more thing too, is that, you know, you guys made a statement about what happens, you know, when we start picking and choosing. But I just want to clarify that that's what we do, is pick and choose, you know, because, and the reason I say that is because it would be one thing if tonight was the first night that we overturned the planning commission, which is not. Precedent's already been set. We've already overturned the planning commission. And I've been here over 20 plus years, and you count on one hand the number of times that we have overturned the planning commission because we're serious about what we do. You know, and I don't think that that's something that we're going to do willy-nilly every month when somebody comes up with something. We're not going to just overturn what our land use map is. We put a lot of work into that land use map. But I do think there are times when, I'll say it again, that we do need to use a little common sense and change it if it needs to be changed, knowing that that's not something that we're going to do on a regular basis, because we haven't. We have done some picking and choosing. I think we've been good with our picking and choosing, you know, on how we run the city and on how we let certain things come in, because there are certain areas in the city that are willy-nilly, and we've made those choices.
applaud your stand for your district. I think that's important to this council. We look to each other for that kind of insight. As the only one that sits at this table that represents the entire city, we have yet to approve one of these homes, even in a residential area, up to this point. And I'm not convinced that this is the precedent we need to set by starting here. And so, for the good of the plan community-wide, I'm going to choose not to support it. Others?
Is that, I do have a question about the tiny home piece. I mean, is that so that you think that's a precedent that we're not trying to set by not moving forward with this? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we've talked about it for the last 2 years. I mean, I don't know. We just haven't found a situation that we felt was compatible.
I don't think those are going to be classified as homes, but you made the point they don't have a, and is Steve or Ruth, can you answer that question? Will those be classified as a standalone?
Yes, sir, they would be considered single family.
But would you classify them as because they don't have a full kitchen? Is that?
Because tonight, it's the first time I've heard about the kitchen, because a single-family dwelling does require means to prepare food. So we would have to go back and look at what we would classify them for.
I did want to say one thing. I haven't made any comments about this. You know, you can look at this, the land use map that's up there, and you can see that the adjacent parcels are all red, and C2 and next door neighbor is industrial. And I understand why staff and the planning commission made the decision that they made, but I do believe that DRD exists, and I think that's how we've used it in the past, to use discretion and to look at individual parcels and work together to figure out the highest and best use for these pieces. And I think kind of what echo what Riley was saying a minute ago, if it's not here, where is it? Because we haven't introduced a project like this anywhere in the city, and this seems to be it's in the back of a parking lot next to a railroad track.
If I may address the DRD, when council passed the DRD ordinance, they had a list of criteria that staff had to review before they could make a recommendation. The spirit of the zoning district shall not be violated, and that's what we're basing this off of, land use and the zoning district. I mean, that's kind of what DRD, I look at DRD as more of an overlay. Would we allow, DRD we typically use for residential, but it's in a residential area. If we do DRD for commercial, it's typically in a commercial area. But it's not typically a mixed use. If it was a true mixed use, we would go to PD like we did with the Greer Mill. So DRD does allow them this option, but it still has to be in character with the area in the zoning district.
Whichever it is, and then separated that little parcel of parking lot back there into another zoning or whatever. I mean, if you label the county houses a motel, you know.
They wouldn't be able to separate that because it would be a landlocked parcel. They would have no road access, and we could not
all right, it'd be in landlocked.
That really doesn't, that doesn't help the situation. I think what staff has presented and what staff presented at the planning commission it's technically it doesn't meet what we have set forth for a guideline for us to move down the road. You know, what the land use map and we have agreed is that is a commercial corridor and should be developed that way. And that's where all this comes about, is that we're having to try to figure out, is it appropriate to override the decisions that we made some time back, and then what the planning commission has said based on the technical aspects of our ordinance.
And back to what you said about DRD, you said, what again about the character? What?
So DRD, we have to meet the spirit of the zoning district, And we consider this zoning district East Poinsett. The spirit of that district is commercial in nature. So that's where we come with the land use, that everything should technically be commercial in nature along East Poinsett.
But it's our choice to override when we so see fit. And it's not like this is the first time the council has ever overridden something, because we have overridden the planning commission before. It's something that we chose to do.
That's correct. Our decision is based purely off of...
Not that's for you, that's for
Final comments? Any kind of final comments? Questions?
Well, with Kimberly not here, we're gonna require just one vote to kill this, right? I mean, it would have been 5-2 otherwise. What's,
To your point, it requires a supermajority of council to override the planning commission.
so what's a supermajority of 6?
Well, Mr. Sale, did you find it in the ordinance? The question is it a supermajority of council of 7 or a supermajority of the voting members of council?
This is the majority of the voting members, because the quorum is already established.
Well, I understand that our opinions, but what is it? There's some ambiguity to that. 7 members, it would require 5 votes. The confusion is that as a supermajority, if that is 4 votes of 6, that is a majority, not a supermajority.
Well, it seems to me like it would be a supermajority tonight, because there's only 6, and so
But if
that's only
3
one.
votes, a tie vote, and the vote is defeated.
Yeah, if it's 3.
Right. With 6 members voting, if it's a 3-3,
Yeah.
it's defeated.
well, we need to debate this after the vote, if need be.
That is kind of what I've been wondering as well.
Mr. Greer, Ms. Helms may have raised an interesting question. If Building and Codes was not aware that there was not going to be cooking facilities inside these buildings, does that change the nature of what can be done there? I mean, in essence, we go back to the argument about...
Within the statement of intent, they will be required to meet what IBC sets as a residence. So I think within the statement of intent, they said that they would meet the IBC standards. So at that point, they would, in my opinion, based on the statement of intent, they would have to install kitchens. Because their statement of intent says they will meet residential code for buildings.
But isn't that, hey, Richie, can you hang out there for a minute? Isn't that why tiny houses kind of started? Because people were trying to avoid building codes, and if you build under a certain square footage, you don't...
Yes, the state of South Carolina has, when we adopt the 2018 code, it will address tiny homes. And it will basically be the same requirements as a single-family dwelling, but the size of the rooms would be smaller. And but there are exceptions like bedroom windows. You can use the door because of the size of the home, but you would be required to be able to store food and prepare food in the homes. Have smoke detectors. They are considered single-family dwellings, and that is what we agreed on moving this project to the commission.
But they couldn't build a building that was underneath that square footage number. What is it, 400 feet, or what is the number?
It's a minimum square footage right now, but we would be able to allow them to build under the 2018 code, because it does allow for tiny homes, and it gives standards to the minimum square footage.
Is there anything related to stove, like a stove?
You are, for a single-family dwelling, you're required to be able to prepare food and also store it.
Now, prepare, you could make sandwiches, but without a stove...
I believe, without having the code book here, I believe it does say a cooking stove.
Yeah, I kind of thought so, yeah.
Ms. Helms, just a quick question. Are there any other circumstances under which you could have 5 units on, I'm going to assume, one sewer line?
we would prefer that they have their own, we ask that they separate these homes for potential of fire spread. We're treating these as single-family dwellings and asking that they have their own water line and sewer line. Yes, sir.
Well, having heard all this, I would ask Chip, does this increase the cost beyond what you're aware of to where it might be something you want to take back and talk about?
As far as putting in a sewer line for each house?
Well, your own water, your own sewer, your own stove, that sort of thing, probably a refrigerator.
Yeah, we had planned to put a small refrigerator, sink, maybe microwave. The stove, we had not planned to do, although we can adapt, okay? But as far as cost goes, we'll go provide it.
Council, we're at the verge of voting. There is I think a question in regards to how the vote proceeds. Are you willing to take that risk this evening, or do you need more insight from staff? Are we ready to vote?
A vote in the affirmative means that we agree with the planning commission and recommend denial, correct? Is that how that?
No, so the request is to rezone to DRD. That would be to override.
Okay, so if we vote for the affirmative, is to override?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other?
So if we vote yes for it to go to DRD, then they still have to go back to planning commission.
No,
Is that right? This is
planning
it?
commission's done.
Okay. Since they've already been, since we actually need to know.
And as a matter of procedure, it's important to note as well that that if you do not have a supermajority to override the planning commission, then this matter cannot be considered for 12 months. It cannot be brought back.
Have we found out what we need yet?
We cannot find it definitively. I will share with you my opinion, and as a responsibility that I have as parliamentarian in this environment. I would concur that the 2/3 vote under the number of voting members would require four no votes, 4 yes votes to require it. So again, because you only have 6 members, you had 7 members present, it would require 5. With 6 members present, I believe mathematically that is 4. And again, it's a simple majority of 6 voting, and I think that's the issue that I'm concerned about. But again, mathematically, 2/3 vote of 6 members is 4 votes.
But we're not really sure.
Do
I mean, if we were voted, you got 4 votes, and then we found out later on that it required 44 votes, what would happen?
Should we make a motion to bring this back, maybe move it to another council meeting and bring it back to allow us to find out, or to have proper counsel here, or what?
That would be a motion.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, should we make a motion to do that?
We take the other motions out
I
first.
mean, we would just have to get an opinion from legal counsel. Just for clarification, we would ask legal counsel to clarify that point.
I think it would be
So
better.
maybe we should make a motion to not vote on it?
You can make a motion to hold it over. Because if you have a vote and it is defeated, it's dead for a year.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a motion.
Well, we got to withdraw.
You do have a motion.
We have a motion on the floor.
That is true.
That was made by
Councilman Griffin.
Councilman Griffin.
Well, if you want to, I'll withdraw the motion and...
You withdraw your motion, and the second was,
Mr. Bettis.
I withdraw my second.
and the second has been withdrawn.
Now you can make your motion.
So the floor is open for a motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to hold this article over, this ordinance over, until we have time to find the exact status of what we need to know. Hold it over till maybe next council meeting or whenever we have the proper information.
So the motion on the floor is to hold this matter over until we can review with legal counsel what constitutes a supermajority in the event that we don't have a full council seated.
I'll second it.
Got a motion. So now then, the motion has been made. We've got a second. A vote in the affirmative would be to hold the motion over. Council clear?
Just to get clarity, so if Mr. Booker comes back for the next meeting, she would...
I know the answer then.
Right. So you don't have to worry about it.
I know that answer.
Come on.
Mr. Jukis he said, I know the answer to that.
Okay, we have a motion to hold ordinance number 35-2019 over for further clarification and consultation with our legal attorney. We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Questions? Or discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, we have the first and final reading of resolution number 15-2019. This is a resolution committing the city of Greer to provide a local match for a Municipal Association of South Carolina Hometown Economic Development Grant. Mr. Deaton joins us for an explanation in regards to resolution 15-2019.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Continuing to look for opportunities to affect outcomes with economic development, we're focusing on wage growth. We think one of the opportunities to increase wages in the Greer community is through entrepreneurship. We're applying for a hometown economic development grant to help us hire a consultant to help us to begin to create an entrepreneurship ecosystem. Some programming that you might see come from that would be things like a startup week, a launch program to help traditionally underserved populations inside the Greer community to start their own business, and kind of the crown jewel of the program would be a business accelerator incubator program to help take stage 2-3 companies to prototyping and scaling beyond. We're very excited about this opportunity, very excited about potential outcomes, but need the assistance of the Hometown Economic Development Grant. For the record, the match that's required, we're required to submit a resolution, but the match that's required will come directly from the Greer Development Corporation.
Good. Thank you, sir. This comes with a recommendation for action. You've heard the recommendation and the request for Mr. Deaton. I'll entertain a motion to receive resolution 15-2019.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Floor is open for discussion.
It says that a local match of at least $7,500. That's open-ended.
That's correct. We do anticipate there could be some additional costs beyond the amounts that we've indicated in the grant. We're, as the Development Corporation, prepared to meet those as they're required.
So that money, whatever money is coming from GDC.
That's correct.
Not
Yes,
the
sir.
city of Greer.
That's correct.
Okay, but you just require a resolution from the city.
The
to do this.
application requires a resolution from the city, and so without taking any chances, we're here tonight to ask for that resolution to make sure we check that box for the granting agency.
Others? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Thank you, sir. Have the City of Greer proposed resurfacing list for 2020. Mr. Steve Grant, our city engineer, joins us for that discussion.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. In your package, you should have two lists, one for the Spartanburg side and one for the Greenville side of the city for paving for 2020. I'd like to look at the Greenville side first. You'll see columns, street names, beginning and ending points, lengths and widths, estimated cost, and the PCI. And just a reminder, the PCI is the Pavement Condition Index with a condition score from the evaluation by Transmap in 2016. For the Greenville, the total length proposed paving is just over 2 miles. Also planning crack sealing and Hammock Crossing and Rich Glen subdivisions, 2.7 lane miles. And the total budget for the Greenville side is $395,210 split between the city and the GLDTC. This should be enough to pay 2/3 to 3/4 of that list. And then transitioning over to the Spartanburg side, you'll see the same columns with names and beginning and end points and so on. Total length being just over 1 mile. Planning to crack seal in the Bent Creek subdivision. I would note that Spartanburg County performs their own evaluation. On top of the PCI we already have, they do an evaluation and they authorize paving funding if their score is 50 or lower. So they'll go out and do their own evaluation independent of ours. The total budget for Spartanburg is $161,000 split between the city and Spartanburg CTC. I would note that these are estimated costs once bids are received and actual costs can be finalized. We may wind up adding 1 or 2 streets or reducing 1 or 2 streets based on the cost of asphalt next spring. With that, I'll try to answer any questions.
If you reduce 1 or 2 streets, do those follow over to 2021?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then the ones that, like for 2019 that didn't get paved in that year, those will be paved this year?
I'm sorry, say again?
The ones that were allocated for 2019
Yes.
that didn't get paved in 2019, they'll
Correct.
follow?
They are at the top of the list on this year. Yes, sir.
And I got one other question too, and this might be more for Mr. Driggins. Is there anything in place, so like Spring Street was paved, and then they made a cut at Spring Street. However, I must admit, it was a nice cut. And my question is, they've cut streets before where there haven't been nice cuts. Is there anything in place that we make sure, like when we pave something brand new and then they come out there and they cut the street, that they put it back nicely?
Nice is in the eye of the beholder. Because what may be nice to me may not be nice to you, and so we have to define that. I would ask Ms. Grant if he could share a bit more of the standard that is required for street cuts and resurfacing of those cuts.
Well, when someone's issued a street cut permit, we do go out and inspect the repair after it's over. Greer CPW has a blanket agreement. We don't inspect theirs. They do so many, there's a blanket agreement. But any plumber or some other contractor, we would do that. And just as a side note, we do, once these lists are approved, I do forward these lists to Greer CPW. So if they have any rehabilitation work they want to do on water, sewer, gas, or anything, they have basically 9 or 10 months to get that done. So we do share the list with them once it's approved.
I know it's not, we're talking about the street paving list, but Mr. Griffin does bring up a great point about guidelines and, more than guidelines, requirements. It was my understanding that we've been working on an ordinance that defines what has to be done. Is that the case, or we?
In my new role, that is one of the things on my list to do. Yes, sir.
You're just drinking from a fire hose, aren't you?
Correct. One day at a time.
I would like to pat ourselves on the back. If you look at if you've looked at enough of these resurfacing lists over the years, and you go back to the PCI, we used to have streets on there that I don't even know if they qualified as a 1. Really, most of our streets would be 30s and lower.
Correct.
Mr. Green, I did have one question for you about the estimated crack seal cost. This was on there, and that's come up recently. You and I fielded some calls from a neighborhood about crack seal, and it's not necessarily our intent to beautify the road, it's just to make them function properly. Is that correct?
Crack sealing, the goal of crack sealing is to eliminate water intrusion into the subgrade. Typically, a road that's crack sealed is if you look at it from a 20-foot view, it looks good. There's just cracks every 100, 200, 300 feet. It's just aging cracks. They're typically, an inch or two deep and allows water to get in. So it doesn't necessarily need repaving, like there's no alligator cracking, no potholes, et cetera. It's just cracks. So the crack sealing is just a preventive measure to keep water from getting into the subgrade and deteriorating more rapidly. So it's just it's a measure to defer repaving, basically.
So just to be clear, the road doesn't necessarily need to be repaved, it's just, it needs to be sealed so that we don't, we can push that off.
Correct.
Gotcha. Because that's the complaint that you and I have received several times, is that when you do the crack sealing, it makes the road unattractive, and we feel like we should pave the entire street, but that's not the way your scoring system works.
Right, crack sealing actually increases the score because it reduces the water penetration and the likelihood of it deteriorating faster. Let me back up. It wouldn't necessarily increase the score. It would help the score maintain. If it's a 65, 3 years from now it might be a score as a 60. It would probably stay as a 65 or 64. It just prolongs the agony of deterioration.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to receive repaving list for 2020.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments in that regard? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, in executive session, we have one matter to discuss this evening. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Need a state second.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss a contractual matter pertaining to downtown street, I can't talk, friends, pertaining to the downtown streetscape project as allowed by state statute section 30-4-70A2.
That is a motion to proceed. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert? Yes. Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, we stand in executive session.
I know it's not in our code, it's not.
That's what the people do at that other place. He bought the house and the pigeons went away. Oh, yeah. That's a house.
He just, 30 seconds ago, he was going upstairs to do something.
He thought we were going to be longer.
He did.
Council, in executive session, we considered one matter, a contractual matter pertaining to the downtown streetscape project. Do I hear a motion to come out of the executive session?
No motion.
And I'll need a second.
Second.
Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Stand adjourned.